The easiest way to train a SalesIQ bot is to point it at any web page, right?
Not quite. Zoho writes each snippet to a region-locked vault, enforcing data residency at the moment of ingestion.
So the bot's knowledge stays where the source page lives, even if our admin toggles regions later.
Exactly. The residency toggle reroutes future training without rebuilding bots, keeping compliance airtight across multinational deployments.
Welcome to this special deep dive for CRM position. I'm really thrilled to have you with us today as we unpack this.
Yeah, it's a fascinating architectural shift.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how Zoho SalesIQ's instant URL training actually governs data right at the exact moment of ingestion. We're going to look at what this choice means for platform professionals who have to execute compliant global bot rollouts.
And before we pull back the curtain on these mechanics, I do want to quickly invite you to subscribe to the CRM Position podcast. If you're a platform professional, a systems architect, or really anyone running global CRM deployments, this subscription is just an essential tool for your workflow.
Right, because it helps you understand how things actually function under the hood.
Exactly. I mean, we break down these complex topics without all the vendor hype, so you can stay ahead of real architectural shifts rather than just, reacting to the latest marketing narratives.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's unpack that exchange we had in the cold open, because what we just laid out kind of completely flips the traditional script on its head.
It really does.
Usually, URL ingestion is almost never treated as a strict governance event by development teams. It's just viewed as a basic copy and paste function.
Right.
Point the bot at a URL, it reads the text, and boom, it's trained.
Right, the fast training claim.
Exactly. But in this architecture, the ingestion itself is actually acting as a hardline data residency filter. Like the very second the data is fetched, a sovereign boundary is drawn right around it.
And that is entirely missing from the standard documentation's surface-level explanation. I mean, they talk about fast training, but they skip the actual physical routing of that data.
It is the most important part.
Exactly. We really need to look at the real mechanics here. So that residency toggle we mentioned, it operates at the organization level, not the bot level.
Right.
And that distinction, it might sound like a minor admin detail, but it is incredibly critical for enterprise architecture.
Because traditionally, you would build a specific bot for Europe, and you'd have to hard-code its residency settings inside that one bot's profile.
Yeah, and then you spin up a completely separate bot for APAC and do it all over again.
Right. It's just incredibly fragmented.
Yes, and that fragmentation creates massive overhead. But here, because the toggle sits at the order level, flipping it seamlessly reroutes all future training calls across your entire tenant. It points them to a designated data center.
Oh, wow. So it's tenant-wide?
Exactly. When an admin initiates training from a public URL, the platform doesn't just read it. It actually ingests that URL snippet into a per-region, immutable training vault.
And that vault is physical.
Right. It physically resides inside the specific data center selected for that organization. Once the snippet goes in, it is locked into that physical geography. The source content mathematically cannot leave the jurisdiction where it was fetched.
Okay, so to make sure that physical boundary isn't accidentally crossed by, an automated system, the architecture relies on this governance by default filter using CIDR blocks. Let's make sure we are totally clear on how that functions.
Yeah, because it is the frontline defense. Basically, a CIDR block, classless interdomain routing, is a way to group IP addresses together.
Right, so think of the CIDR block filter like a highly strict bouncer at an exclusive club, right? A bouncer who only lets in people with a specific zip code on their ID.
I like that analogy.
Admins have to pre-approve the domain names. If the platform goes to fetch a page and the underlying IP address resolves outside that approved zip code, outside the approved CIDR block, the bouncer turns them away.
Exactly.
The ingestion is blocked entirely. It stops dead before a single byte of data is even parsed.
It forces sovereign compliance before the data ever enters the application layer. But there is another layer to this process that is heavily reliant on edge computing and caching.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, before the actual parsing and vaulting happens, Zoho's edge caching layer stores the raw HTML snapshot for 24 hours in that same local data center.
Oh, local caching.
Right. This mechanism is designed to prevent the accidental cross-border transfer of the original page while still allowing your local systems to retrain the bot rapidly if, say, the parsing fails the first time.
I find it so helpful to visualize this geographically. Like, think of that 24-hour edge cache as a highly secured customs holding area at an international airport.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. The raw material, the HTML, arrives on a flight. But instead of officially entering the country, it sits isolated in this local holding area. It never formally crosses the border.
Precisely.
The bot walks into the customs area, extracts the specific insights it needs, puts them into the local immutable vault, and then the raw material just quietly expires and disappears from customs after 24 hours.
Yep, it just drops out of the cache.
But wait, I have a question about that. If the snapshot is cached in that holding area for a full day, what happens if the original source page on the live internet changes during that 24-hour window?
And that causal link, the disconnect between the live page and the cached snapshot, is exactly where this architecture can break down if enterprise teams just blindly trust the automation.
So there are real risks here.
Huge ones. Let's explore the real failure modes, starting with the exact scenario you just triggered. We can think of it as the stale snapshot trap.
The customs holding area gets out of sync with reality.
Precisely how it happens. So if a public FAQ page, say a page detailing heavily regulated regional return policies or financial rules, is altered on your live website after that 24-hour cache expires.
The system doesn't know.
Right. The underlying training system has no native way of knowing the source changed. The bot will continue to serve the outdated, potentially non-compliant information from its immutable vault because the vault is locked.
Wow.
Yeah, it'll keep serving that stale data until an admin manually triggers the next ingest to refresh the cache. I mean, you are essentially leaving a window open for misinformation.
Which, depending on your industry, translates directly into regulatory fines.
Exactly.
That is a terrifying reality for a heavily regulated industry like banking or healthcare. It means the instant part of instant URL training actually requires strict manual vigilance.
It's definitely not set it and forget it.
Right. So the cache expiring causes a stale data trap. But even if the cache is perfectly up to date, you still have to worry about where that data is physically originating from in the first place, right?
Cool.
Which brings up a huge issue with content delivery networks.
Yeah, that brings us to our second major failure mode, the CDN cross-region leak. We just talked about the bouncer, right? The IP range check blocking ingestion if the IP is outside the approved block.
Right.
But what happens if a URL resolves to a globally distributed content delivery network that serves content from a data center physically located outside your selected residency?
Which happens constantly. I mean, global enterprises rely on CDNs like Cloudflare or Akamai to distribute their website content globally so it loads at lightning speed everywhere.
Exactly, and that is where the bouncer gets confused. The platform's IP range check might fail because the DNS resolution points the training bot to an edge node outside the sovereign boundary.
Oh, I see.
So if the system misinterprets that resolution, or if the CDN routes the fetch request dynamically to balance a traffic load, you can end up caching raw pages in unauthorized vaults.
And the moment that happens, you've breached your localization rules.
Completely.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate here, because this feels like a massive step backward for user experience. Are we actually degrading the AI's intelligence and hurting the customer experience by rigidly geolocking knowledge like this?
How do you mean?
Well, the whole point of a globally distributed CDN is to provide the best, most up-to-date public content to anyone, anywhere at lightning speed. By forcing these local-only snapshots and demanding strict IP resolution matching, enterprises risk severely fragmenting their knowledge base.
I see where you're going.
We are intentionally creating these latency-induced blind spots, holding back the bot's potential just to satisfy a residency checkbox for the legal team.
You are hitting on the most controversial debate among platform architects right now.
Yeah.
It is a very real, very deep friction point.
It seems like a huge trade-off.
It is. You are actively trading unified, instant global knowledge for sovereign risk mitigation. Yes, you are degrading the absolute speed and global uniformity of the bot, but you are doing it because the alternative is a catastrophic data breach.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, if an EU regulator audits your global bot and finds it scraped personal data from a US-based CDN node, the fines will instantly wipe out any customer experience gains you made. It's a trade-off the enterprise has to make.
Right, the risk is just too high.
Exactly. But before we try to resolve how to manage that friction, we have to look at how these rules actually get deployed, which is where we find our third failure mode CI/CD pipeline drift.
CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous deployment. The automated pipelines that dev and ops teams use to push code and config changes to production.
Right. So let's say your organization goes through a major restructuring. A deployment script successfully updates your central identity and access database. updating the residency policy matrix that maps your new legal entities to their proper data centers.
Okay, sounds good so far. But something breaks in the pipeline between that central database and the actual URL fetcher.
That is the core of the drift. The central matrix is updated, but the DevOps team, they fail to write or maintain a specific webhook that pushes that update down to the separate microservice governing the bot's instant training API.
Oh no. So the central rules say one thing, but the API is operating on an older routing logic.
Precisely.
So the matrix clearly states APAC data stays in APAC, but the API never got the memo. The result is that your bots quietly ingest data across borders, completely unnoticed by the system, because the API thinks it's doing exactly what it was told to do 3 months ago.
Yeah, and that data bleeds seamlessly into the wrong regional vault, and nobody knows until a compliance audit flags the geographic mismatch.
Which is an incredibly difficult conversation to have with an auditor.
To say the least.
I mean, if I am the VP of Global Ops listening to this, my absolute worst nightmare is a regional admin accidentally vacuuming up EU data because of pipeline drift or a CDN leak. To prevent these failure modes from destroying a rollout, we have to fundamentally change who is accountable for what.
We need a survival guide.
Exactly.
And the only way to navigate this without stepping on a landmine is to implement a very specific, practical, operational framework. We can structure this as a 4-step RACI rollout. RACI, for those who might use different terminology, stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed.
Okay, so my first thought in building this survival guide is that someone has to draw a definitive map of where the data is legally allowed to live before a single URL is ever touched.
Yes. That map is step 1, map the matrix. This is where you establish the central residency matrix that dictates which legal entity maps to which specific data center.
And who owns that?
The Data Protection Officer, the DPO, is strictly accountable here alongside that VP of Global Ops. They have to sign off on the exact geographic boundaries. It cannot be an IT decision. It is a legal and operational mandate.
That makes total sense. Once that map is drawn and approved, someone actually has to lock the gates on the system level, right?
Correct.
So step 2, lock the gates. This is where the regional CRM admins come in. They are responsible for translating that map into the system by setting the domain allow lists. But here is where it gets incredibly dangerous, right? Admins often try to save time by whitelisting wildcards.
Oh, this is a massive vulnerability. If an admin types in, say, *company.com into the allow list, they usually think they are just broadly approving the main corporate website and its subages.
Right, but they didn't just whitelist the marketing pages. They just whitelisted the community forums, like forums.company.com is now an approved training source.
And community forums are filled with user-generated content. Users posting their names, their account numbers, their complaints. If the bot ingests user-generated content through an instant training URL, you are suddenly pulling raw, unfiltered personal data into a locked training vault.
Which is a huge problem.
It is a direct violation of purpose limitation principles under almost every major privacy framework globally.
Yeah.
The CRM admins have to be incredibly precise. No wildcards.
Okay, so the map is drawn, and the gates are locked carefully without wildcards. Step 3 is ensuring this happens automatically so humans aren't manually checking boxes every time a bot is deployed.
Exactly.
Program the pipeline. This goes directly back to solving our CI/CD drift failure mode. DevOps engineers are responsible for automating the API matrix so that a bot version destined for APAC programmatically cannot physically ingest EU-sourced URLs. The pipeline itself must reject the cross-border API call.
Which builds a robust system, but, systems inevitably experience outages. That brings us to step 4, establish the fallback.
What does the fallback look like?
Well, the incident manager needs to configure the local-only mode. In the event of a regional network outage or a sudden compliance freeze, disabling external URL ingestion ensures the bot safely falls back to preloaded internal knowledge bases that are already verified.
But there's a massive trap here too, right? Solving an uptime incident can easily create a privacy incident if they aren't careful.
It is perhaps the easiest mistake to make under pressure. If there is a regional outage and an incident manager is watching their uptime metrics plummet, they might blindly toggle this local-only setting just to keep a bot alive and answering basic questions.
Yeah, just to stop the bleeding.
Right. But in doing so, they can accidentally re-enable external URL ingestion without the proper matrix checks in place. Suddenly, just to stay online, that bot might start pulling data from a non-approved jurisdiction.
So the uptime graph goes back to green, but you just triggered a massive silent data privacy breach.
Exactly.
Looking at this framework, mapping the matrix, locking the gates, programming the pipeline, and establishing the fallback, it totally reshapes traditional IT roles.
It really does.
I mean, think about the reality of this. A CRM admin, simply by triggering an instant training URL or setting up an allow list, is now acting as a de facto data steward. That is a level of data governance responsibility usually reserved for a DPO with a law degree.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
You're asking everyday admins to make foundational architectural compliance decisions at the click of a button.
And that profound shift in responsibility is exactly why platform leaders need to zoom out and understand the broader implications adopting this architecture. If you lean into this region-locked vault system, fundamental things change regarding your auditability, your team velocity, and your long-term roadmap.
Let's start with architecture and auditability, because this is where the system really shines. Because the platform automatically tags every single ingest with the originating URL, the exact fetch timestamp, and the specific data center ID, you are creating a perfect provenance record without any extra engineering.
Which is the holy grail for regulators. We really need to talk about GDPR Article 30 here.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Article 30 specifically requires organizations to maintain a detailed record of processing activities, commonly called a ROPA.
And usually, building a ROPA for AI training data is an absolute nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
But here, it satisfies that Article 30 requirement right out of the box. You don't have to go begging your IT team for manual log extraction from 3 different legacy systems when the auditors show up. The ROPA is built into the Vault's metadata.
Exactly.
Plus, from a pure cloud cost perspective, storing these URL snapshots locally in the edge cache entirely avoids cross-region egress fees. If you have high training volumes, that actually moves the needle on your AWS or Azure infrastructure bill.
The cost savings are great, but the impact on team speed is perhaps even more significant for platform leaders. Because the residency rules are baked into the instant training pipeline itself, the way you handle legal reviews fundamentally changes.
How so?
You no longer need your legal team to review every single bot you build. You do the legal review once per region to approve the pipeline matrix and the domain allow list.
Oh, I see. So if my team needs to spin up 10 new localized bots in Germany next month, we don't sit through 10 separate legal review cycles. The German Vault and its pipeline rules are already pre-approved.
Exactly the benefit. Industry estimates show this pipeline-first approach accelerates global bot rollouts by 30 to 40%.
That is massive.
It is. But, and this is crucial for your roadmap, platform leaders have to aggressively prepare for the downsides of this isolation.
Right, the fragmentation we talked about.
Exactly. Because you are legally isolating knowledge by region, you must build central deduplication processes to prevent your global knowledge base from fragmenting. If you don't, your bot in Paris might give a slightly different policy answer than your bot in Tokyo, simply because they are learning from completely isolated local vaults that aren't talking to each other.
And going back to that 24-hour edge cache, teams have to plan ahead and pre-stage critical path URLs in regions that might have limited data center capacity, right?
Yeah.
Because if you are trying to push out a critical compliance update to a bot, you cannot afford latency delays while the system waits for a local cache to clear.
That pre-staging is essential to keeping the system fluid while remaining compliant.
It really is a total paradigm shift. We have to stop viewing compliance as a tax that gets applied by lawyers at the very end of the bot building process.
Well said.
In this architecture, compliance is the physical track the train runs on. If the track isn't laid down correctly with the precise CIDR blocks, the strict edge cache rules, the automated CI/CD pipeline, the train literally does not leave the station. The bot cannot function.
Which brings us to what you can do about this right now. If your organization is deploying agentic intelligence, SalesIQ bots, or any instant URL training systems, we want to leave you with 3 concrete actions you need to take this week.
I know the first one on my list would be a massive wildcard audit. You need to comb through your domain allow list today. Look specifically for anything that might accidentally sweep up user-generated content community forums, blog comment sections, support ticket portals, and lock those down to highly specific, controlled URL paths. No more asterisks.
The second action is a pipeline check. You need to sit down with the DevOps and guarantee that your central residency matrix actively syncs with your instant training service APIs.
Build the webhook if it doesn't exist.
Right. Do not let your deployment scripts drift from your actual physical data routing. And the third action is reviewing your incident response playbook for regional outages.
Making absolutely sure that your incident managers know exactly how to use the local-only fallback mode, without inadvertently triggering unauthorized external ingestion just to keep a bot online during a crisis.
Those are the immediate technical steps. But I want to leave you with one final provocative question to reflect on as you evaluate your own global architecture.
Let's hear it.
If your AI's intelligence is strictly confined by geographic borders, how do you maintain a single, unified brand voice globally without manually duplicating every piece of training data?
That is the multi-million-dollar architectural question that every enterprise is going to have to answer over the next few years. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It is so critical to look past the vendor claims of instant, easy AI and see how these platforms actually function when the data hits the wire.
It really is.
Remember where we started today. The common assumption is that you just point a bot at a web page and it learns. The reality is a complex, region-locked vault enforcing sovereign compliance at the exact moment of ingestion. Stay curious, check your allow list, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.